Next I'm going to cut the slides that support the drawers on the sides. These are going to be side-hung drawers, and the slides will be mounted in these slots. And for the slide material, I'm going to use a UHMW plastic instead of wood. I like the UHMW because it's slippery and smooth, so the drawer slides smooth without any noise. It's pretty sturdy stuff. It holds up. So I've got a sheet of 1/2 inch UHMW, and I'm going to cut strips off for the drawer slides. I've got the table saw set up for a little over 1/2 inch. I'm going to cut the strips 1/2 inch wide, and then I'm going to run them through the planer to take them down to the final dimension. I need 6 strips 13 inches long, and unfortunately I can't get 2 out of a side, so I'll get what I can. Okay. When cutting UHMW on a table saw, there's really only one thing that I do to help it work a little bit better, and what that is I raise the blade a little bit higher than I normally would. And the reason for this is you don't want the teeth running in the plastic for very long. So if you had the blade lower, where the teeth would stay in the blade most of the arc, you have a tendency to melt the plastic. So what I do is I bring it up high so it just comes through the wood, and then it's not, or through the plastic, and then it dives back in, and it doesn't spend a lot of time rubbing on the plastic. So the material cuts pretty good with the table saw. Well, I didn't know how that was going to cut on this planer, and it didn't. It didn't cut very well. It sniped pretty badly. It caught the pieces and gouged them. So that may not work. Probably going to have to find some way to retain these, to hold these parts a little tighter. That wasn't very good at all. Alright, I ran these plastic strips through the joiner, as you saw just now, and they sniped badly. You can see there how that profile has been damaged. So I had to build this jig, and the jig holds the strips and gives them support. I've machined this material before, but I used a minimum of 3/4 inch wide strip. When I got down to this 1/2 inch strip, it's just too flexible. So anyway, they fit in this jig, holds them in place, and then this tapered piece here, hammer that in to lock them in place. And I ran them through the planer in that arrangement, and they cut just fine. There's the drawer slides installed in the dados in the case. These make good slides. They're smooth and slick, and they don't make noise, and they wear very well. Plus, if they did ever wear out, they're easy to replace. I'll just mount them with screws. been doing some layout work here for the bottom trim piece for the front of this cabinet. It will have an arched lower board as a decorative item. So I've laid out the arch at the dimensions I want it, and I've laid out the curve as I want it, and I've positioned 3 nails so where they will be in the waist when I make the final cuts. Putting a bending strip on these 3 nails, I can get a pretty good curve. I can be careful not to shatter it. So that is my curve for the bottom rail. So let's trace that on there, and then I'll cut it out on the bandsaw and later finish it off with the drum sander. You can see the curve right along here. Goes from one edge of the piece to the other. I picked the curve just kind of by eye, something that I thought was smooth enough and kind of a graceful curve and reflective of some of the curves I've seen on Arts and Crafts pieces. But you can see where I placed the nails. There's one nail, there's the center nail, and the third nail, and those are the 3 points that I used to form the curve. We'll finish this on the bandsaw and then smooth the curve out on the drum sander. Well, I didn't video this piece while I was making it, so just let me quickly show you what I've done here. But you can see the arch. Alright, now it's time to make one of those cuts that always makes me nervous. This is the cut for the taper on the legs. And, you know, after you've invested so much joinery in a petite piece of wood, and you make a cut that's going to determine the success or failure of that piece of wood, it can make you a little nervous. So anyway, here it goes. I'm going to taper these legs. This is my tapering jig. And you see it's just got a homemade slider in here that I can tighten with a wing nut to feed the stock past the blade and cut the taper. This was a test piece I made, and it came out pretty good. It was about the 3rd test piece, and I'm pretty happy with it. So now I'm going to invest this in the stock. Hearing protection. Save these tapered pieces because I'll use them as cauls for clamping when I'm gluing it up. All right. 4 pieces all tapered on the right edge, and that looks pretty good. I'm going to put the legs back on the sides just to make sure they stay as straight as possible in case there's some stress relieving since I made that cut. Okay, so Alright, so I'll leave them that way overnight just in case they try to bend a little bit. I mean, they're going to bend if they want to, but I figured this will keep them straight as possible. Well, I've started the glue up now, starting by gluing the legs to the side panels. And I forgot to turn the camera on, so they've already been glued and clamped. This is the first step in the assembly. I'll let these dry for several hours, and then I will begin assembling the cross frames. Now I'm beginning to assemble the jigsaw puzzle of this carcass. All the pieces are loose, and I got to assemble them all at the same time. It's a bit of a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. I align the pieces, make sure they're tight in place, then give it another tap. And the way I'm assembling this case, I'm going to assemble everything on this side first. Then I'm going to lay the case on its side and then assemble the rest of the pieces in the middle. There are some cross pieces that slide in these grooves, so I'll put them in last. They look like this. I need to fine tune my tenons a little bit on some of these, so I'll use a rabbet plane to take off a little bit. As you may recall, I started out with some dovetail joints. Here's the top corner dovetails that I did cut, and I've glued them up and clamped them. You see that upper corner clamped, and you can see the rest of the drawer frames mounted in there. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to my channel.